Dr. Desai, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this incredibly important discussion. I also want to thank Black Agenda Report um, uh, 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 and the United National Anti-War Committee for co-sponsoring this, as well as Black Agenda for Peace. In your opening comments, Dr. Desai, you quoted political scientist William Galston, who wrote, as you cited, between 1920 and 1984, the contest between the two parties resembled World War II, with a high level of mobility and rapid gains and losses of large swaths of territory. By the contrast, the contemporary era resembles World War I, with a single, mostly immobile line of battle and endless trench warfare. Uh, I suggest that during the 64-year period where the contest between the two parties resembled World War II, that there were multiple ideologies being debated and struggling for control, many of which had, as Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, what she called racism, white supremacy, undergirding them. And that today, that the contemporary era resembles World War I with a single, mostly immobile line of battle and endless trench warfare. And to me, that's because many of those earlier battles have been settled, and that both parties now in the American duopoly are now co-opted by the same benefactors. And so the battles, to a great degree, are more of form over substance. And I'm not presenting this as an absolute, but I believe that there is validity in that position. Um, uh, there are periods in history, epochs, times that are marked by notable events or particular characteristics, moments, events that shape or change the course or direction of history. Many times, I believe, while they're happening, people don't realize that they're actually in the moment. Columbus with his misguided self and his navigation of the globe, the Industrial Revolution, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Uh, those are, to me, are some of those times where people didn't realize that they were in the moment. I believe right now we are in, not only in terms of American domestic politics, but in terms of the global geopolitical landscape, we are also now in one of those epochs. Um, there are other events or moments that occur that in that moment, you know that life has changed forever. December 7th, 1941, the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Roosevelt told us yesterday, December 7th, a date which will live in infamy. April 4th, 1968, the assassination of Dr. King. July 20th, 1969, the Apollo lunar module, the Eagle, landed on the moon. September 26, 2022, the U.S. blows up the Nord Stream 2 pipelines. So today, right now, whether it's on the international or on the domestic fronts, America is recklessly muddling its way through these incredibly perilous times, very perilous and very recklessly. One of the real ironies to me in all of this is that most of, if not just about all of this peril that American President Joe Biden warns us about, and former President Donald Trump talks about keeping us safe from, these are problems of America's own making. They've brought these issues upon themselves. There are, as I just mentioned, periods, epochs, times that are marked by notable events. The American empire is truly on the wane. As you said in your open, the unscrupulous elite, and as you referenced, the counter elite headed by Trump and his band of maverick or lumpen or warlord corporate CEOs, they're, to me, in this death spiral, trying to salvage what has become the unsalvageable. They're trying to save a dying empire. The Greeks couldn't do it. The Romans couldn't do it. The Ottomans couldn't do it. There was a time when everyone in the world knew that the sun never set on the British Empire. Those days are long gone. So they're trying to salvage the unsalvageable. And in many instances, they're using scorched earth tactics to do so. And there is the adage, a man who will burn his own nation to the ground to rule over the ashes. That's what I see playing itself out. We're transitioning from a unipolar world dominated by the American imperialistic hegemon and its puppets, such as the EU, the World Bank, and the IMF, to a multipolar world that's being influenced and managed by organizations such as BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And the United States seems to be hell-bent on using militarism to try to offset what is really presenting itself as economic dynamics. And it's failing to do so. So many might ask, why have I spent so much of these opening remarks focusing on the foreign and not the domestic? Well, because as Dr. King wrote in the letter from Birmingham jail, quote, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. So, different context, but I think the quote still applies. The foreign and the domestic issues in the United States are inextricably linked. Vice President Harris said, for example, quote, as president, I will never waver in defense of America's security and ideals, because in the enduring struggle between democracy and tyranny, I know where I stand and where the United States belongs. If elected commander-in-chief of the U.S., she says, she will ensure that the country always has the strongest and most lethal fighting force. Well, what does that mean? How do you get there? And at what sacrifice? On whose dime? This, to me, is one of the great conflicts in American domestic politics, even though a lot of Americans don't really put these issues together. Because you can't reconcile the ledger. It doesn't foot. It doesn't tie. You can't reconcile guns and butter. You can't fund conflict on three fronts. And again, conflicts that the United States has started, if not four fronts, if you talk about what's happening on many other countries on the continent. You can't fund these conflicts and have a $25,000 first-time homebuyer credit. You can't fund these conflicts. You can't send $8 billion to Ukraine, $8.7 to the Zionist settler colony called Israel, $600 million to Taiwan. That's $17 billion that Joe Biden wrote off in one day. You can't do that. You can't send $17 billion abroad in one day and have a $25,000 first-time homebuyer credit. You can't have an opportunity economy. You sent that money abroad. You can't have more aircraft carriers, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and hypersonics, and still increase the child tax credit. How are you going to pay for that? You just can't get there from here. And as Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet, to sleep, perchance to dream, therein lies the rub. So that wraps up my prepared comments. I don't know if you want me to get into what I see as some of the numbers being. You want me to do that now? Okay. So just this morning, in flipping some of the channels, MSNBC, I think they announced their latest and last polls for the election, and they call it a dead heat. I don't see it that way. I think the pollsters are making some of the same mistakes today in assessing this race as they made in the Obama Romney race, where the day of the election, Romney was up by the polling numbers by 7 points, 7 to 10 points, depending on who you asked. And we know what that result was. It was a whipping. And I'm not saying that Vice President Harris is going to whip Donald Trump, but I do believe that she's going to win. A lot of people were looking for an October surprise. I believe his racist hate fest 2024 that was held last Saturday in New York, that's 6 hours of eugenic, racist, hate-filled rants, could very well wind up being that October surprise. And particularly of all of the disgusting, vile things that were said, this one so-called comedian whose name I'm not even going to mention called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage, which has sparked incredible fury from Republicans and Democrats. He said, there's a lot going on. I don't know if you know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Pennsylvania is a swing state. Pennsylvania, they have, I think, 20 electoral votes in the Electoral College. And Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 by the margin of 0.72%. Biden was able to reclaim the state, winning it by 1.7% or by in 2020, or by the margin of about 80,500 votes. Pennsylvania's Latino eligible voter population has more than doubled since 2000, from 206,000 to 620,000. That's according to census figures. More than half of those 620,000 voters are Puerto Rican and eligible to vote, and they're not happy. That is one data point that I think could impact Pennsylvania. I think it could help to offset what has been attributed to angry African Americans, particularly angry Black men in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, either deciding to vote for Trump or, which I don't think those numbers are nearly as great as they're being projected as. I think those angry Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania, and they are really angry, could make, and I underscore could make a difference. So I see the election going this way. Harris 293, Trump 245. I also believe that the vice president could win, and I underscore could win, North Carolina, because when you look at the number of African Americans that did not vote in 2020 in North Carolina, I think the number might have been 1 million. And if you look at what Reverend Barber and other organizations in North Carolina that are tied to him, the voter outreach and voter turnout efforts, they've targeted something like, I think 3 to 5 million. I can't remember the numbers, but they're doing their best to offset the number of African Americans that did not turn out in 2020. And Trump only won North Carolina in 2020 by 74,000 votes. So I think this racist hate fest 2024 could do a whole lot to motivate and get a whole bunch of angry people of color to turn out in North Carolina. That's 16 electoral votes. Biden won Arizona in 2020, 11 electoral votes. He won them by 10,457,000. Whole lot of Latinos in Arizona that could turn out. And Florida, I'll even throw this out there. She might, Vice President Harris might even win Florida. Trump won Florida by 372,000 votes. You've got 500,000 Puerto Ricans in, I think, Central Florida. You got a whole lot of Puerto Ricans in Florida. They love their island. They love their flag. And so I see it as Harris 293, Trump 245. And my 293 does not include North Carolina, does not include Arizona, does not include Florida. So, and Trump will have a hell of a hard row to hoe if he loses North Carolina. So that is the end of my analysis at this moment.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.